With tax season now underway, there are new reporting requirements to be aware of if you have something called a bare trust. To learn all about it and the implications, we're joined by Ali Spinner. She's a tax partner at Crowe Soberman LLP. Ali, thank you so much for joining us. What's a bare trust, and what do our viewers perhaps need to understand about them?
That's a great question. A bare trust is effectively when one person or one entity owns title to an asset in beneficial ownership for someone else. So a bare trust relationship can occur when the legal title holder and the beneficial owner of the asset are not the same person. Somebody holds something in trust and takes care of it for someone else.
And do I understand correctly that until now, if you were involved in a bare trust, you did not have to, there were no tax implications directly to you?
Correct. And until now, there was no filing requirement required with the Canada Revenue Agency. As part of changes that have been made and have been made for a while but are finally coming into effect for bare trusts for the year December 31st, 2023, they will have to file a T3 trust information and tax return and file it by April 2nd, 2024. This will be the first time. And
do they get a T3 issued to them by another entity?
It's a great question, and this is part of the big confusion relating to bare trust. No, so a bare trust really is in respect of the ownership of the item, the title, I should say, of the item. They are not the beneficial owner of the item, meaning that the income that is reported from the entity doesn't actually show up on the return.
Right.
So the conundrum is that a tax return has to be filed, but generally, I think in almost all cases, there will actually not be any income or tax on the trust return itself.
But there will be a cost to that, I would assume, correct?
There absolutely is a cost to it. And one of the interesting things is that these trust tax returns are not necessarily easy to file. A lay person, a lay taxpayer who is wanting to file this for themselves may have difficulty. I completely understand that the CRA would like more transparency, and Finance, when they wrote the legislation, they're looking for more information about who really owns assets. Right. If assets are held by one person, who's really the beneficial owner? The interesting point, though, although there will be costs associated with the filing, in many bare trust tax returns, we'll be telling the government who the trustee is, who the beneficial owner is. We won't actually be telling them what the asset is on that trust tax return. There will be cost. There'll be a lot of time spent by accountants. I'm not sure that the government is going to get the information they're looking for from all of these filings.
What kind of quantum, in terms of these bare trusts, like in terms of how many tax filings you would have per year for your practice, let's say, would it be another 10%, 5%?
Oh, that's a great question. We're actually trying to figure that out right now. Given that this is a situation where the first time, we're actively working with our clients right now, trying to find all of the bare trust relationships. There will be many, hundreds of thousands, millions in Canada. I'm not sure of the number, but a couple of examples of bare trust relationships, which would probably be helpful. For example, in trust accounts in investment houses. So if a parent or a grandparent holds an in-trust investment account for a child, if there are certain assets held by that investment account, or if the investment account is a certain size, that's a bare trust. For example, in the real estate community, it's very common to have title held by a bare trustee corporation in bare trust for a different entity as a beneficial owner, whether for liability protection reasons, purposes, or privacy reasons. Those are all bare trusts. If a person is added to an elderly parent's investment accounts or bank accounts in title only for purposes of ease of administering their elderly parent's investments or bank accounts, that's a bare trust where that person has added themselves to title. So it's a challenge because we're not sure how many are out there. We know that there's lots, but we're going through each of our client lists to determine, speaking with our clients to determine who has a bare trust, who has to report, and make sure we get it done by the April 2nd due date.
So it sounds like many taxpayers may not know clearly whether they have a bare trust or not. I mean, it's not a case of them looking for the phrase bare trust in their documents, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. Right. And in many cases, a bare trust document doesn't actually exist. You don't need an actual trust deed or trust document to create a bare trust. It's merely that relationship where the trustee is the agent or acting for the beneficial owner's interest. So it's going to be a challenge.
Okay, there's other things to talk about as well here. There are additional disclosure requirements for something called express trusts.
Yes. Absolutely. So as part of this plan for the government to get access to more information, the government is requiring, I would say, typical trusts, a trust that you would always have filed a tax return for. We now have to provide a lot of detailed information to the government with respect to who settled the trust, all of the trustees of the trust, and all of the beneficiaries of the trust. So we have to provide, for example, in a trust, the names, dates of birth, social insurance numbers of all of the trustees if they're individuals, but not just the trustees who actually receive money. We have to provide this information for any contingent beneficiary, any possible beneficiary, even if the trust is fully discretionary. So that's going to be an interesting challenge as well.
I think Ryan asked a similar question, but what do these changes mean to your industry, and what does it mean to the CRA itself? It's receiving a lot of new incoming information.
Let's talk about the CRA. I think the CRA is going to be bombarded either with new filings with respect to the bear trusts that haven't filed, or a tremendous amount of information about the ownership, about the beneficial ownership of assets with respect to who the beneficiaries are of trust. There's going to be a tremendous amount of information. I'm not sure how they're going to process it. With respect to how it's going to impact the accounting industry, it's requiring a lot of time from accountants to help their clients understand, and in many cases, help their clients, the trustees of trusts, go out and find the information that's necessary for the disclosure information.
Okay, well, you need to get back to your office.
Yes, I do.
So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
That was Ali.